let's talk about this news from today. The NFL has scheduled a Friday owners meeting to discuss the start of camp. Do we have any idea what's going to come of this?
Look, we see that the NFL and the Players Union have been going back and forth, volleying, basically negotiating pay and standards as far as health and safety, dealing with COVID-19, of course, because, look, we're only about a week away from, actually less than that, for where rookies would be able to report, because the rookies are always able to report a week before, say, the veterans would be. So we're creeping up on that time, and they still don't have a uniform policy of pay and how training camp's going to be and even how the season's going to look. So I'm sure that is first and foremost, or might be the complete docket. And so I'm wondering how much decisions will be made tomorrow. I'm sure people are going to be wondering. We've seen players complain on Twitter already that possibly they might be tested every day, and they might not be down with that. But that's something that, look, if they want to play football and want it to be safe, that might be a precaution that they're going to have to take. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what comes about of this meeting. And there might not be decisions that are totally made. We might have to push this thing just kind of like we're seeing college sports pushing a week or two. Maybe we see the NFL push a week or two because they don't have a consensus on what they want to do yet.
It seems like the consensus in the NFL, Larry, is that they're going to start on time. The question is, will there be fans? At what capacity? And different venues are making different decisions. Is the conversation in NFL circles that an on-time start may be in jeopardy?
I think that's something that maybe is not being openly discussed in big-time fashion, but I'm sure it's somewhere within the realm of possibility that might happen. And here's the thing, because I jump back and forth from discussing college sports and where that stands, and, of course, the NFL, and I'm far more convinced that the NFL would have a full season as opposed to college football. And I think the NFL would be in a better position for testing and to absorb the hit of no fans, and so they can go forward even without a preseason, which I know you and me have discussed probably the last time I was on. Mm-hmm. But, it's something that I'm sure has to be part of that. And look, even when maybe it was a month ago, we hear all the news kind of circling around, where when the NFL made the schedule that they might push the first 4 games to the back end, so that maybe that they can shift this thing. So, that is probably something that they have to look at and consider really the trends around the country, because you are having teams traveling all over the country as opposed to an NBA bubble where they're all centralized.
He's on Twitter at Larry Holder. TheAthletic.com/New Orleans is where you can find his work. And his latest piece, which is up right now, is about the Saints' offensive line. And the headline reads, "Why the Saints Revamped Their Offensive Line and What Still Needs to Improve." Larry, is it really fair to say they revamped the offensive line when you basically just move one guy out?
Well, you drafted someone else, and you're potentially moving another player to another position. So I would think you would look at the center and the guard spots, and 2 out of 4, I'd say that's a revamp. And you secured Andres Pete, but I would look at it in this way, and it's really displayed in the piece about where the issues came along the offensive line. It was primarily up the middle. Even though, Teron Armstead did not have as good of a season in 2019 as he did in 2018. Ryan Ramczyk was pretty steady in both years. But really up the middle, and you can point to Pete, you can point to Larry Warford, which is really dramatic, his drop-off. But also, look, people kept asking me, well, Eric McCoy, he had such a good rookie season, why would you move him? Well, if you compare what Eric McCoy did his rookie season to Max Unger's final season, McCoy wasn't as good as Unger, which is expected. But that was Unger's worst year, admittedly, with the Saints. And McCoy's year was a little bit worse than that. And so I feel like the Saints, if they're going to make some shifts, get rid of the guy who had a real drop-off in Larry Warford, bring in the best possible center in Cesar Ruiz, and shift Eric McCoy over. So, look, I'm not saying it's a total renovation, but it's revamped. I think it's fair to call it that.
I'm not disagreeing. I just wanted sort of the explanation there. I certainly think, Larry, that if Warford shifts to guard and Ruiz plays center, now you've got a very legitimate conversation. Do you think obviously they haven't stepped on the field, so it's like we can't even look at rookie minicamp to make any determination, but like, would you be comfortable putting some type of percentage or confidence points on how you think that works with Ruiz and McCoy when games start?
At least McCoy had an OTA and a mini camp to get started with Drew Brees. I'm assuming Cesar Ruiz has not worked with Drew Brees at all yet. And so that is certainly something that the Saints are going to have to juggle and not have a lot of time to really see if they want Ruiz at center and move McCoy, or make sure you keep McCoy at center and then play Ruiz at guard at a position where he hasn't really played in a few years and admittedly did not play well when he was at Michigan. He felt far more comfortable at center. And I'm just looking at it in this sense. If you're taking Ruiz in the first round and you took McCoy in the second, you probably have a higher grade at Ruiz at center than you do McCoy at that time. So that's why I keep looking at it. But it is definitely not in stone. I think they need to, as much as they can with the structure of practice, which we don't know, and we don't know if there's going to be any preseason games to get even padded things against an opponent. But, ultimately they would really want Ruiz at center, McCoy at guard. But it is definitely written right now in like erasable marker or pencil because I don't think they really know right now.
Do you think that if, and I know we're playing hypotheticals, but you brought up an interesting point that McCoy started as a rookie, but he did have minicamp and OTAs, and he had a full offseason, which Ruiz clearly will not have. So if they determine from jump that they're better suited leaving McCoy at center, do you think that means Nick Easton starts at right guard ahead of Ruiz?
I would doubt it.
Really?
I think Ruiz comes in and plays. Yeah, I just think that your first-round pick, someone on the offensive line, you get rid of Larry Warford. Look, if they liked Nick Easton enough, they would have had him there, and then maybe they would have drafted a guard later in the draft. So the fact that they went so high with Ruiz, plug and play now, just like McCoy. I mean, second-round pick, plug and play right now. And so, I think Easton. Well, you might be bringing up, if they don't have camp and this, that, and the other, Easton might know the offense a little bit better. I mean, is it a possibility? Sure, but I'd be surprised if that would be the case.
But McCoy was a bit out of necessity, right? Because you had Max Unger very abruptly retire, and there wasn't much left on the free agent market. I mean, they went and signed Nick Easton really potentially as a replacement for Unger, and then McCoy won the job, and Easton sort of regressed. But then Easton, when he got his chance, played pretty well last year. But I guess I also look at it like this. I'd love your thoughts on this. When people bring up Ryan Ramczyk, well, they drafted Ramczyk in round 1, but he wasn't going to start as a rookie. I mean, that he only started because Zach Strief got injured. They drafted him because he thought he was he was great value there at the end of round 1 at that position, and he's become sensational. But he wasn't drafted with the thought of starting day 1.
Oh, no, he wasn't. But also, if you remember, when they signed Nick Easton last offseason, Sean Payton was saying publicly, he's our center. And he was saying that in late March at owners' meetings and things like that. And so they brought in Nick Easton and thought he could be a starter. So, but I do think, though, that when they saw McCoy, all right, they liked what they saw in him and felt confident in him. And look, Easton struggled in training camp last year where I thought, boy, he might actually get cut. And obviously he didn't. And when he had to play in a pinch, he was actually pretty solid. But, yeah, look, it's I'd put it in the same boat as, like, look, when you drafted McCoy and Sean Payton's talking about Easton, and once they got McCoy in, it was McCoy's job from, like, basically day 2. I mean, essentially. So I just look at Easton as he's their number 6 guy, swing tackle, playing in a pinch, but you bringing in Ruiz, you're bringing him into play right now.
Larry Holder, theathletic.com/New Orleans, why the Saints revamped their offensive line, which still needs to improve. That's the piece that's up right now. Before you run, you did also reference some metrics at the end of your piece about in sort of deep diving in the offensive line from 2019. Give me a nugget, something that really stood out to you in all the metrics that you sort of dissected.
How drastic of a drop-off Larry Warford underwent from 2018 to 2019. And it's a metric that I used from Sports Info Solutions, and it was basically a blown block percentage. And Warford's blown block percentage in run blocking and pass protection jumped significantly, as in doubled on each. He doubled the total of missed blocks in the run game and doubled his missed blocks in the pass game in 2019 than he did in 2018. Really apparent why they moved on from him. And I also look at it as, look, when you look at Andres Pete and his pass protection last year, your eyes didn't deceive you. It was really a struggle. But he did not struggle as much in the run game. So basically the Saints took the lesser of two evils and yet still overpaid Andres Pete. But that's just what it is.
Didn't have options, man. It was a weak guard market. You needed a guard. And he's also your backup left tackle, right? I mean, that's
a part of it.
Like it's got to be a part of it because Armstead's been so injury prone.
Yeah, absolutely. And the drop-off, they feel like, is more injury prone than Warford, where it was just a complete drop-off. Like, Warford's strength was the run game, and he was really bad. Like, one of the worst guards in the league in blown blocks as a guard. It was a dramatic drop-off. So, and then you add that to it. The Saints were 4 days into free agency, got held up. Okay, I guess we got to pay Andres Pete. And so that's what they did. And, look, we've seen injuries to Teron Armstead. Andres Pete is easily your next best option at left tackle if there's an injury to Armstead.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.